Dear students, in the earlier module, we have understood about the concept of motivation, motivation cycle. Now, we will discuss about classification of motives and also about the concepts of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and to study approaches to motivation with reference to Maslow's need hierarchy. Now, we discuss about the classification of motives. As per the research on the motivation levels, we can have different types of motivations. One is biogenic motives, or we can also call them as biological motives or physiological motives or primary motives, because these primary motives are not learnt, they are there within us. And when I said biological or physiological, obviously it is food, hunger, thirst, water, temperature, all these things come under the primary motives. Then the second category is sociogenic or psychogenic motives, or we can also call them as secondary motives. These motives are learned. Based upon our experiences, we learn these motives. So, these are called as secondary motives. These are further divided into psychological motives, social motives and personal motives. Now, we will see in detail what this classification is about. Now, let us see the physiological or biological motives. These motives to a large extent are rooted in the physiological state of the body. These are called as primary motives, and these primary motives are very much essential for our survival. They must be satisfied first before we take up any other activity. Primary motives come to the action when the physiological balance of the body is upset. This balance is called homeostasis. Examples of primary motives are temperature, pain, sleep, hunger, thirst, air and maternal drive. The second classification is about social motives, also known as learned or secondary motives. Human life has not only just biological aspect, but also social aspect. These are called social motives as they are developed due to the result of relationships with people, and these are specific to human beings. Hence, human behavior is activated by the following common social motives. For example, achievement, affiliation, aggression, power and curiosity motives. What is this achievement motive? It is the desire to achieve some goal. This motive is developed in the individual who has seen some people in the society attaining high success, reaching high positions and standards. David McClelland, who conducted a longitudinal study on characteristics of high and low achievers, found that the high achievers choose and perform better at challenging tasks, prefer personal responsibility, seeks and utilizes feedback about the performance standard and have innovative ideas to improve performance. On the other hand, low achievers do not accept challenges, puts on average standards and accepts failures very easily. Another secondary motive is affiliation motive. All of us do have this motive. This is the need to be with other people. This is also revealed through one's attractions to others through friendship, sociability or group membership. It is also known as gregariousness. Another example for the secondary motive is aggressive motive. It is a motive to react aggressively when faced with frustrations. Then the power motive. People with power motive will be concerned with having an impact on others. They try to influence people through their reputation. They expect people to bow their heads and obey their instructions. Generally, people with high power motive choose such jobs where they can exert their powers. They want people as followers. They expect high prestige and recognition from others. Acquisitive motive. This motive directs the individual for the acquisition of material or property. This may be money or other property. Curiosity motive. This is also known as stimulus and exploration motive. Curiosity is a tendency to explore and know new things. We see people indulging in a traveling to look at new places, new things and new developments taking place outside their environment. Once we have seen the biological or primary motives and the secondary motives, under that psychological motives we have seen and the social motives we have seen. Now, the third category would be personal motives. These are highly personalized and very much individualized motives. The most important among them are force of habits. We see different people having different habits like chewing tobacco, smoking, alcohol consumption, etc. There may also be good habits like regular exercising, reading newspapers, prayers, meditations, etc. Once these habits are formed, they act as drivers and compel the person to perform the act. The next example is goals of life. Every individual will have some goal in the life. They may be related to education, occupation, income, sports, acquisition of property, public service, social service, etc. Once a goal is set, he will be motivated to fulfill that goal. Another example is level of aspiration. That refers to aspiring to achieve or to get something or reach a goal. But such achievement depends upon the level of motivation the individual has. Attitudes and interests is another example of personal motives. Our attitudes and interests determine our motivation. These are very unique to the individual. For example, a person within the family may have positive attitude towards career of women and all others may have negative attitude towards it. So, this is the classification of motives. Let us understand now how motives can be further classified into intrinsic and extrinsic. Some psychologists have explained motivation in terms of personal traits or individual characteristics. Other psychologists see motivation more as a state of temporary situation. Some explanations of motivation rely on internal personal factors such as needs, interests and curiosity. Other explanations point to external factors like rewards, punishments, social pressure and so on. Look at these examples. Varun is a 5th grade student and excels academically in class. He carries out his task just because he likes and enjoys what he is doing. What type of motivation does this show? Intrinsic or extrinsic? Similarly, if there is a competition that encourages the performer to win and to beat others, what is this type of motivation? The third example, you are seeing a cheering crowd and the desire to win a trophy in the sports person. This indicates intrinsic or extrinsic. So, you can see in the first example intrinsic motivation. The child wants to study well. It is coming from his inner force. Whereas, the other examples, that is performing well with the crowd of the cheer and to win the trophy or to compete with someone, these two are the examples of extrinsic motivation. You can understand this picture which indicates intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So, by now you might have understood intrinsic motivation is that motivation which occurs from within. So, we want autonomy, that is the freedom to take up certain things, freedom to take the decisions, freedom to take up a task, then mastery. Once you want to excel in something, you want to master that. It could be a art, it could be a music, it could be your studies, it could be doing anything else. Similarly, you want to do with a purpose. I want to be a good human being, so I want to help the people in the society. You have a purpose. No one directed that. It is coming from within you. So, examples of intrinsic motivation are these: autonomy, mastery, purpose, etc. Similarly, extrinsic motivation is, it is coming from the outside forces. When we say outside forces, it can be the events, it can be the people, it can be the objects like rewards, or it could be punishments, anything that is coming from outside the individual which is pushing the person to take up a particular task. One example here is compensation. For example, you are not doing very well in academics, but you are highly motivated to get the recognition by participating in probably the sports or in any other extracurricular activities or in any performing arts, where you are able to compensate that you can perform not in the academics but in the non-academics, and the kind of the recognition that you are getting that influences you to motivate yourself. Similarly, punishment also is an extrinsic factor. All of us do not like to be insulted by anyone, or we do not want to be into the negative situations. So, negative situation is something like a punishment. If you are forced to take up a task, or you did not do a particular task and so you are punished, we want to avoid, we want to ignore such things. So, naturally, to avoid pain, to avoid some pressure, to avoid some insult, we do certain tasks, that is extrinsic motivation. Or something might be very attractive to us, it could be like a reward. Your father or your mother might have said, if you do good in academics, I will give you the two-wheeler as a gift. So, here this reward is very appealing to you, it is acting as an incentive to you, so you might be performing well. So, here excelling in the studies is not coming from within, but the reward which is associated with your academic performance, that is motivating you to study well and do well in the exams. Let us understand these definitions now. Intrinsic motivation is the natural tendency to seek out and conquer challenges as we pursue personal interests and exercise capabilities. When we are intrinsically motivated, we do not need incentives or punishments because the activity itself is rewarding. For example, you like music and you spend a lot of time practicing music. No one needs to give you the reward. No one needs to give you any kind of a punishment to learn the task. So, that is coming from within you. Intrinsic motivation is the motivation to act for the sake of the activity alone. For example, people have intrinsic motivation to write poetry. If they do it just because they enjoy it, it is an example of intrinsic motivation. On the other hand, if you do something in order to earn a grade, avoid punishment, or for some other reason that has very little to do with the task itself, then it is known as extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is the motivation to act for external rewards. For example, people have extrinsic motivation to write if they do so in the hope of getting published, being famous, or making money. So, is intrinsic motivation better or extrinsic motivation is better? Which is better? Always there is a debate on this. We may do things to receive a reward, to avoid guilt or anxiety, or for pride, or to complete an external demand. Extrinsic motivation is powerful but impoverished, and some feel it is essential when teaching an uninteresting or enjoyable task. But the research shows that students who continually perform only for extrinsic motivation can become resentful, resistant, or disinterested. Extrinsic motivation can undermine intrinsic motivation. Recently, the notion of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation as two ends of a continuum has been challenged. An alternative explanation is that just as motivation can include both trait and state factors, it can also include both intrinsic and extrinsic factors. Intrinsic and extrinsic tendencies are two independent possibilities, and at any given time we can be motivated by some of each factors. Hope the concept is clear to you, what is intrinsic and what is extrinsic. Now let us understand the different approaches to motivation. Different theories spoke about the motivation process based upon their theories. In this particular module, we will be focusing on most important theories. Now let us understand the humanistic approaches to motivation. Humanistic approach believes in striving tendency of the individual for realizing one's own potentialities, especially creative ones, strengthening self-confidence and attaining the ideal self. There are two important persons related to this humanistic theory, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, as a humanist, believes in the strength and possibilities of human beings. According to him, all human beings have a natural inclination for learning and a desire to grow and progress known as self-actualizing tendency. Every individual will strive to realize his potentialities and to grow to become a fully functioning person. Hence, in the view of Rogers, the motivation for self-growth and becoming a fully functioning person are important concepts. Maslow's theory is also a very influential humanistic explanation of motivation. His theory is known as hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow suggested that humans have a hierarchy of needs ranging from lower level needs which are essential for survival and safety to higher level needs for intellectual achievement and self-actualization. You can look at this figure wherein it is a hierarchy of needs. The first level needs are the physiological or biological needs. We all know that unless these physiological needs are met, we cannot think of any other needs. For example, if you are feeling very hungry, if you are feeling very thirsty, or if you are suffocated in a particular room, do you think of achieving any other goal, or do you want to fulfill your satisfaction of hunger and the thirst? Unless these needs are satisfied, you cannot concentrate on the other aspects. The second level is safety needs. Once your physiological needs are satisfied, you feel like you want to have a shelter. You cannot live under a tree, under the sky. You have to be secure from the environmental factors like sun or rain or cold. So, naturally you search for a small shelter, that is the second level need. The third level need are love and belongingness. Then you think about the family, about the people together, about the friends, connecting to the people, all these things. Then the fourth level will be the self-esteem needs, where you want to excel in the life, you want to be evaluated, you want to be recognized by the people in the society. So, all these four level needs are called as deficiency needs. Unless these needs are met, you cannot aim at the higher level needs. So, these are called as D needs or deficiency needs. Once you reach these four level needs, then you will be aiming at intellectual needs, where the cognitive needs, trying to understand, trying to be very intellectual, trying to be creative, and the aesthetic needs, that is appreciating the beauty around. It could be the beauty of the nature, beauty of the architecture. So, you are aspiring, you are getting the happiness by fulfilling these intellectual needs, aesthetic needs, and then comes the self-actualization. Self-actualization is the ultimate motive, where we have to utilize all our potentialities and capacities optimally and also for the benefit of the society. We are not using our talent or potential for the self-vested interest, but to see that they are helpful to the society. And the last need is the transcendence need, that is completely you are attached to the society, but at the same time you are detached from the surroundings. So, this is the example of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Beyond the self-esteem needs, that is starting from the intellectual to the transcendence needs, we call them as the growth needs. Growth needs make the person more optimally functioning at the societal level. Now, let us see in detail what this hierarchy says. Maslow called 4 lower level needs for survival, then safety, followed by belonging, then self-esteem. These are called deficiency needs. When these needs are satisfied, the motivation for fulfilling them decreases. He labeled the 3 higher level needs as intellectual achievement, then aesthetic appreciation, and finally self-actualization as being needs or growth needs. When they are met, a person's motivation does not stop. Instead, it increases to further fulfillment. Unlike the deficiency needs, these being needs can never be completely filled. The strive for improvement is always there in the individual. Maslow's theory, however, has been criticized because the people do not always appear to behave as the theory would predict. Sometimes people get motivated by many different needs at the same time, and all the needs are interrelated. Dear students, by now at the end of this module, you might have understood the classification of motives, how different motives can be divided into biological and the psychosocial motives. We have seen the examples. You can understand this concept of motivation as you implement this concept in your day-to-day life. Whatever tasks you are doing, try to understand what you are doing from this perspective of motivation. Apart from all this, we have seen intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, how intrinsic factors motivate us, how extrinsic factors influence our behavior and direct our behavior, and also we try to understand the approaches towards motivation, especially with reference to Maslow's theory is also a very influential humanistic explanation of motivation. His theory is known as hierarchy of needs.